Okay, we're good.
Okay, okie dokie, then we'll call to order the April 17th Finance and Administration meeting. Michelle Patanopoulos is not here. She is on an island, which feels a lot better than here. But, okay, so do you have any updates for the good of the group?
Just to segue into number 2, if I could take it from there.
Yeah. Can you just lay the background for everybody that may not be watching that the communication was a priority that was voted on for council as one of our top initiatives to work on this year?
Thank you. So I just wanted to segue number 2 to talk about council expectations for the communications priority plan. Councilwoman Rickards has been spearheading. We had a chance, I think it was mid last week, Sean Metrick met with borough staff to talk about this. Kind of brainstorm. We had about a half an hour session just to talk about what it could be, all the potential ideas. And Sean took the first stab at developing an approach to it. And I'm not going to steal his thunder because he put the work into it. He's not here. He's not on an island, but he is in Arizona. So much nicer than here, weather-wise. So I'd like to let him take the lead on that next month.
Perfect.
But what I'd like from council, and use this time to do, which is why it's on the agenda, is to have a discussion about your expectations for this communication plan, and then take those expectations and ideas, fold them into the staff ideas to get a full plan. So.
And this is perfect. So I actually mapped this out on our flow chart. And so far we're on target here where
Cool.
the idea was given, communication is a priority, it went to council president gave it to FNA, and that's when we kind of diverged. So staff went off and kind of brainstormed, and now's the opportunity, which is why we put it on the agenda, for council within committee to brainstorm what are we talking about when we think about the communication.
Okay.
Once we have those 2 separate entities, which I think is really interesting to brainstorm on how we both approach the same priority, is when we will come together. And Sean and I actually have an initial meeting just to almost collect both sides of the data and then come together. And so we have something to present to the full council of where do we agree, where do we did not agree. Because I think we all appreciate the fact that communication is a top priority, and particularly on the heels of some rapid major change, which is really exciting in our borough, but we want to make sure that we're on solid ground and have this new communication pathway. So I really look forward to kind of seeing how this new flow chart works. I will follow up with Michelle upon her return and kind of review what we all talked about here. But Rob, can I ask, simply, what are ways that we can communicate better, avenues and resources that we can utilize that are existing, or those that we should invest in that you think would help citizens both through technology and non-technology understand what's going on in the borough better?
Well, yeah, we've heard from our neighbors that they want to see the bulletin boards, by the city,
right.
So people don't want to see that go away, even though we're in a digital age. So that's, and you tried valiantly with the newsletter, posting a newsletter. So I wonder if we want to do that. I mean, now we have the weekly newsletter that goes out by email.
Right.
So I don't know if there's a way to duplicate that in the bulletin board, or just thinking about some way to inform people that way. And then, yeah, I mean, the emails I think are very successful, the email newsletter. So I'm very happy with that.
So, and I get bunched up on the language. So that's the Friday flash emails. Or
Right.
It's not the flash emails, because flash emails are used for emergencies. So this is the weekly information.
Correct.
Right.
Right, gives the meeting schedule for the following week, the trash schedule.
Yeah, if any changes to the trash.
Right.
collection. Yep.
Announcements for openings on committees and commissions.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's been a really nice addition. So then maybe there's another layer of communication when people call into the office with particular complaints. Maybe that's an area where we're trying to brainstorm.
Complaints like?
Well, I don't know, like my street light is out or whatever that, whatever your current system is, if people are feeling that they, I mean, we've talked about this,
Sure.
like with the brush.
Yep. With the trash.
With the trash, people are like, oh, my brush hasn't been picked up, and should that go directly to advance, or I guess we figured some of that out already. So,
Right. Well,
but there
actually,
may be
there's still
room
a
for
problem.
improvement.
Yeah. Sure. The expectations with the phone that is the expectation that you can call and get someone if you need to reach a human. Right? Is that Michelle? Does that go to Michelle? Is Michelle the first line of contact where you would call? Additionally, social media, I would want to put on there. What's the role of social media
Right.
for us to explore?
I was going to say, you're not saying anything that foreign to what we've already talked about at
you're
staff
talking
level. So it's like, yes.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yep.
So here is one thing. For a period of time, we had See, Click, Fix. We did away with. Okay. So it's my understanding that I love See, Click, Fix because you could quickly snap a problem. You could theoretically see where it was in the work progress. And at the time, we just didn't have the staff and the infrastructure to support that. I'm not suggesting we return to that, but rather that can we even ask the question? Is this
We
something
have a
that,
process.
but not that you could be walking and take a picture?
No, but it's paper-based right now.
Okay.
Just what we learned through See, Click, Fix was that the most difficult thing to manage was that those of us who are tech savvy, yeah, it's easy, we can do it. Most people who interact with it and enforcing it are not as tech savvy, and there was just a big, oh my God, how are we going to get this, right? And so we reverted to paper.
Okay.
And so anytime anybody calls with any issue having to do with anything having to relate that you would put in See, Click, Fix, we log that on a piece of paper. We follow it. Most of them goes through Ed Harmon, and then he uses that. That's our paper trail. We get contact information and then close the loop once it's completed, forward that form to the person who called.
How much was See, Click, Fix?
I don't have the number off the top of my head. A couple thousand is what I'm thinking.
2,000 or 2,000?
I don't know.
Okay, I won't answer that. Okay, so there's a paper process, but not one that a citizen could observe from the outside without calling. It just stays within the office.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. The See, Click, Fix was difficult to manage because anybody with the link could use it, and so it could be someone from not inside of Narberth. We would get issues not inside Narberth.
Oh, really?
And, I really appreciate the spirit of it. I like it.
But it's just...
It just wasn't the right scale
That's not
for us.
Sure. Okay. Additionally, the role of social media and how the borough uses that, and whether it makes sense for the borough then to control that messaging and reconsider the information officer role. Now that we have Michelle, who I may be misquoting her degree, but I believe her degree is actually in organizational communication, if I remember correctly. Or some version of that is that we have someone with a bachelor's degree with this very discipline at hand. So it may be time that we reconsider how that information officer role manages things like our borough social media site. But to your point about the kiosks, I do think that it's really important that we don't assume that A, everyone's on social media, B, everyone has access and a comfort level with just technology. On the other hand, I also think you can't run daily to kiosks and give updates, in that the kiosk could most certainly serve as a place to give some really emergent and necessary news, but also reminding and redirecting people to either visit the webpage or come into the office or call. So I guess I mean to say my expectation is that you're not going to run around to 5 kiosks every day to announce something, that there has to be some manageable plan.
But there will be a plan that dictates when an issue comes up. Let's say, for instance, let's use the example of the comprehensive plan. It's a big deal, right? It needs a certain level of advertisement, right? There's going to be a unified approach. What does it look like? What are the methods to get that information out?
Sure.
How often? All of that is going to be detailed. So everybody, regardless of who has an issue to bring up, we're just going to apply that process. Does this rise to public information? Yes. Here's the methodology. This is what you need. We need print. The print media needs to be X amount size so it communicates effectively. It will be updated once a week, whatever that will be.
Yeah.
Who's going to do it? Where?
Right.
I like that. So there's kind of a top tier priority information that could go out to the bulletin boards.
And without stealing too much thunder, I'm going to take a lightning bolt perhaps. We even went one step further and said not everybody even has the ability to go to a message board, right? And so the first rule is that you can't get everybody. It's impossible to think you're going to have 100% saturation. What can we do to minimize that? We have the message boards, we have technology. Technology is all-encompassing, website, social media, email blasts. But what about those folks who are more homebound, right? So there's that mailing print media also. So we're developing some strategies to touch as many people.
Which is expensive.
It is, but if you do it in a way that is quarterly or twice a year, it becomes more cost effective because the return is that much better. The investment to touch somebody through the mailing, that look, this is how I need to get in touch. Excellent. There is a value in that. And a refinement of current technologies. We're exploring ways to use what we have right now. The Flash email system was set up prior to my tenure here, and it's just anybody type in your email address, sign up for the Flash.
Right.
So it's kind of a dumb list in that we don't know where people are. A good email list collects information, what your name is, what block do you live on, and what's your email address. Therefore, if we have an issue like we have an emergency on the 100 block of Conway, we can go in and query 100 block Conway, send an email, text message, those sorts of things.
Wow, that would be great to have that specificity.
That's great. Web page. You've done a tremendous amount. I mean, did we even have a web page when you started?
Oh, yeah, look at Wayback Machine. You ever looked at that? The web archive of every single URL since the beginning of time.
Really? Okay, so you certainly helped our web page evolve. Is there some place that we can, do we want to relook at the web page and say, could we develop it more at this point?
So my philosophy with web pages are that most people do not go to web pages anymore. And so the previous version was graphics heavy and text heavy and very difficult to find information. So the idea, the guiding light behind it was to make our website clean and easy to get information. The idea of how I designed it was that this is the backbone and it can expand and grow. It's ripe for an update and it's only as good as the information that goes into it. I know I've had communication from the Shade Tree Commission. We're going to be talking next week about how we can expand the website. Boards and commissions, different events, those sorts of things, start growing it.
And that's, I think, an important point because we briefly touched upon this. The Shade Tree, I think, is a perfect example of an organization that could have a really robust web presence. And we want to be able to say, we want you branded in the same style and connected with our borough web page, and not you have to go out and do your own with a different look. I really think the invitation to boards, groups, commissions, business associations to say, how can we support you through our large-scale borough web page makes a tremendous amount of sense.
And especially if you apply the logic to borough related, such as Narberth Borough or Narberth Business Association. It's not a borough thing, so they should have their own, but it should be connected, right? Versus borough related, Shade Tree Commission.
I agree.
It falls under the borough, so they should actually have. I'm not in favor of maintaining separate URLs by private citizens because it changes and it's difficult to manage.
And we don't own that. I mean, I actually think that's a really slippery slope and would not support that for a number of reasons, not just for branding.
But if we can incorporate their ideas into their own little section inside of the borough's website, I'm all for it.
That's great. And I agree with you. That's different than, it's important that the Narberth Civic Association and the Narberth Business Association maintain their own web pages. I mean, that's kind of a matter of transparency and integrity. And we can certainly link those or direct people from our webpage, but should not have control over that.
Yeah, and that was something, I guess it was last year, Matt added the business page, right? And so, and that has frequently asked questions that's meant to be helpful to business owners who may be looking to move into the borough or expand.
Right. And we actually, Sean and I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago and originally thought, should we ask the Narber Civic Association to take over these kiosks? And which brings us to the next stage of that flow chart is what are the community groups that may be partners in this? And I got a lot of feedback actually from council members and community members saying, it's actually really important that the borough maintain ownership of those kiosks. It's borough property.
Yep.
The borough should be responsible for the messaging. And I agree. I think we should kind of shortcut that.
Yep.
Which, again, I like this process where we didn't jump right to that, but rather we're working through this process and discovered, this actually is our property. And we should be responsible as elected officials and the borough staff in controlling that message and getting that message out
They
there.
need some love. They need to be updated. They need to look nicer than what they do now.
Yeah, well, we have no place to go with that.
Yep.
Okay, so I see us then suggesting that we look at the kiosks, a newsletter, and that's different than the weekly newsletter. So we're going to have to come up with some different...
Like a quarterly newsletter.
Something. I know that I tried that newsletter and then folks weren't interested in that, but maybe we revisit some version of that. The weekly emails, what's our social media presence, the office phone, and reaching individuals. It looks like see, click, fix is something that is not worth rediscovering, but maybe just what the process for issues.
Yep.
The web page. Is it time to do an update? And is there an opportunity to do kind of emergent text alerts? To replace that flash email. We're not texting, hey, there's a meeting.
Nothing on that list is anything that we haven't talked about in staff level.
Okay.
So,
Good. So it's a match. Yeah, and the only one thing to add might be in person when people come into the office. Like, is Michelle... I assume, is there like kind of a protocol? So Michelle is the one to greet people. At one point we imagined like a kind of service window, which we're not doing at the moment, So is there a revision of the space that's needed or some sort of, I'm sure you've discussed all that.
No, I thank you for bringing that up because one of the themes and observations we had for the priority and goals for the office was this idea of customer service. I think a transaction window is not the spirit of Narberth, that you come in and it's this pure transaction banking model, but rather one of an invitation and a space where people come in and they don't feel like they're just disrupting an office workday. How do you balance the fact
it's a tough thing to balance.
Well, right, because you have to get work done, but what does that space look like? That it's still seen as kind of the heart of our borough.
Right, and you've done a bit of renovation with the painting and...
More than a bit.
I mean, didn't you reconfigure a little bit the seats?
We've just removed the clutter. We removed the barricade. Like when you would come in, it was only about space, maybe like 6 feet by 6 feet. That you would have to, big barrier, lots of boxes. We removed all that. It's a lot more conversational and inviting. Yep.
And you know what then, in F&A, I think that if the office were to come back and say, you know what, an investment in furniture or the plants or lighting or whatever that is would make that space more welcoming and inviting to community members, I think that we should, under this priority, think what does that mean to really communicate that message.
You'd support that.
Yeah, and what the staff need to, that's the other side of it, to really make it a workable space.
Right.
So if that means like a noise machine or a wall of plants or, some way to kind of create a space so people can come in and sit but not be disrupting.
Agreed. Okay, so then I'm going to take this. Sean and I are going to connect, and then we will merge the ideas and really provide a concise report for everyone.
Yep.
That gives us something with a little more teeth to really examine. Make sense?
Yeah.
For action items, Matt, do you feel the need to run through these, or can we just say this? We're hearing these coming up next on the docket here.
I could just run through, minute schedule of bills.
Right.
Those are, standard. 114 Forest Ave. That's the preliminary plan approval. That's tonight. I believe we're at day, 72, and there's a 90-day requirement to take action. So we're kind of approaching the end of that requirement. I believe the May 1st work session meeting will be day 84. All right, so we could, if there are issues with it tonight, it could be delayed to then, but you really can't delay it past then. Firefighter tax credit, that was discussed during the last meeting cycle, and then the resolution after it is just defining the parameters. And then we're going to have Maggie Dobbs, senior planner with MCPC in the house tonight to present our comprehensive plan.
Okay. Any public comment? No. Okay, with that, we're going to move into executive session for 5 minutes, and then we do have an executive session prior to council as well, so we will not return until 7:30.
All right, so we're adjourned.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, adjourned.